the global stage.
Did you know that if you were the only person on earth, Jesus would have still come to die for you?
When you suspect somebody of alcohol intoxication,
Putin chose this war, and now he and his country will bear the consequences.
But have you ever wondered how long it took Adam to sin against God from the day he was created?
He will take from you to give to another person,
such that we can remove his heart and replace it with that of the animal.
Love does not demand its own way. My goodness.
Hi, welcome to the global stage. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Today, we are bringing our final discussion to an end on the silent war against children. Now, we've established two silent wars. The first one, that is against the self-control. Secondly, against what is the standard of right or wrong. And thirdly, we'll find out what they are against in this particular video. No, the state of one's conscience is the picture of the information one has been trained with. And a few years ago, a school in the US gave the green light for the indoctrination of Satanism and satanic worship to be taught in school under the cloak of religious freedom. Watch this report. I'll be right back.
In Florida to hand out educational material about their beliefs to kids at state schools. Marina Portnaya has this report.
Public education in America often uses coloring books to teach young Americans about math, science, and current events. This year, a new book filled with games and lessons about Satanism could be distributed to students attending public school in Florida's Orange County. The 10-page Satanic Children's Big Book of Activities features characters named Annabelle and Damien who demonstrate rituals to explain Satanism. This expanding wealth of information for America's young minds was made possible after a Florida judge last month ruled that if the Orange County School District allowed Christian groups to disseminate Bibles and other materials in its schools, then other religious and atheist groups should be given the same right to distribute their material. And followers of the Antichrist seized on the decision to treat all faiths equally. A spokesman for the Satanic Temple tells Raw Story that, quote, if a public school board is going to allow religious pamphlets and full Bibles to be distributed to students, as is the case in Orange County, Florida, we think the responsible thing to do is to ensure that these students are given access to a variety of different religious opinions, as opposed to standing idly by while one religious voice dominates the discourse and delivers propaganda to youth, unquote. In a ruling that was aimed at maintaining religious neutrality, students who may never have intended to learn about Christianity, atheism, or Satanism will now receive an introduction to all three. Marina Portnaya, RT.
All right, so welcome back. Now, very interesting again. So the introduction of Satanism and satanic worship was actually introduced to the little children, not even the teenagers. It was actually to the little children in that school. No wonder that even in our days right now, there are a lot of children cartoons coming up with demonic agendas, satanic worship. And one such cartoon is called The Little Demon, released last year. It's a very terrible one. If you watch the storyline behind it, it's very you actually know their true agenda. And why are they targeting little children? Remember that popular saying, catch them young and they shall be yours forever. So if you can catch them young, definitely they'll be yours forever. So that is why they are targeting little children. That's why I say this is a silent war against children. Now I want you to watch this video. It is actually a family movie produced by Disney this year. Watch this short video. I'll be right back.
Going. There we go. That's funny.
All right, welcome back. So what do you make of that 10 to 15 seconds video you just watched? You know, Disney is a family channel institution, and it used to be one of my favorite channels when I was growing up, especially in the early 2000s. And in fact, I spend most of my hours watching Disney Channel's program, especially the sitcoms like Hannah Montana, like That's So Raven, The Still Life of Zack and Cody, Wizards of Beverly Hills, Jesse, Corey in the House. And that is where I fell in love with rock and roll music, and then boy bands as well, especially like Jonas Brothers and the Big Time Rush. And at that time, I didn't know that Disney is actually one of the household of Lucifer and the weapon of war against children to destroy their minds and raise them for Satan. I didn't know at that time until recently, a few years ago, I got to know their true agenda. You see, when one is making a movie, first of all, you start with what we call the concept of the movie. And once you bring out the concept, you bring out the script, and there's a board that sits down to analyze that particular movie, the script. And then the script is acted and then directed at the same time. And so in that movie, in that Disney Channel movie, there was a part where they are saying that the children will hold up a placard written, "I love you, Satan," for like 10 seconds, and then immediately they will change it to "I love you, Santa," as you watched. But the question is, what was the purpose? Was it a coincidence? Nobody put such video there without thinking twice, because these things are planned. And if you know, in the media, few seconds advertisement is very strong, because it goes to your subconscious, and that's what we call the subliminal messages, to subconsciously go there, and then in time it begins to play in your mind. And one of the tools or the art of manipulation is what we call subliminal messages. Few seconds videos, few second clips or pictures, it goes there, and then in time it begins to play in the minds of our little children, especially because subliminal messages are actually below what we call the threshold of consciousness, and in times it begins to process in their subconscious, and in later life they begin to act on these things that was there, because the easiest way to manipulate and pollute one's spirit is to use what we call subliminal messages. And it is done on purpose. And that is why in that Disney movie, they put that placard, "I love you, Satan." You remember I was telling you that no one was born gay. And I'm going to show you how it works. For example, if you put a child in a room and without any information, that child will grow up naturally. And that child will have natural affection towards the opposite sex and not the same sex. Now, one of the ways they do to manipulate children into thinking that it is normal to have sexual attraction towards the same sex is, number one, is through pictures, through vibration, that is sound, through videos, and then the last one is through what we call subliminal messages, and then colors as well. So at that early stage of their lives, they begin to manipulate the minds of these little children into thinking that these things they are doing is normal. And so if you could put a 10-second video where you say, "I love you, Satan," and then it quickly goes away, they are subtly programming the minds of the new generation to think that Satan is the good guy. That is satanic worship, into thinking that Satan is now the god of this world. Meanwhile, the God of this world is the God of Christ. So what are they really against? They are against what I call the sovereignty of God. They are raising a generation who will come to love Satan as their God and not the God of Christ. And that is what they're actually doing with that particular video you just watched. That is why a day is coming when it will be a crime and a hate speech to say that Lucifer is Satan. To say Lucifer is Satan will be heresy, because in Freemason especially, because they know Lucifer means the light bearer and Satan means the oppressor, the devourer, the one who resists. They know it has a negative connotation. And so because Lucifer to them is the good guy, If we say Lucifer is Satan, it's heresy for them. And so if you speak anything negative against Satan, against or Lucifer, it will be termed as hate speech or hate crime. And that is why they are raising the little children to love Satan. And so if a child grows up loving Satan, knowing Satan is the God, is their God, and you speak anything negative against them, they will hold you response. They will say it's a crime, it's a hate speech, as they are doing with the LGBTQ movement, as you see nowadays. So that's what they are doing. Now, what do you think is going on? What they are doing, like I said, number one, is they are working against the sovereignty of God, replacing the sovereignty of God with the sovereignty of Satan. And with little children, what you tell them at that early stage is what they will believe, and they'll grow up thinking that it is true, and it's very difficult to take that stronghold from their minds. And so if you're a parent, you need to be very strong about the things your child is watching, especially the cartoons they are watching, especially with Disney Channel. I told you, is one of the house of Lucifer against the innocence of children. You have to be very careful about the cartoon books they are reading, the children program they are watching, especially the international one they are watching. You have to be very careful, because these things are there to indoctrinate your children into what they want them to be. Nothing happens by chance. No one was born gay. It is a plan. It is by design. It just doesn't happen. It happens right when they are born, even at the hospital. And I can prove how they start, but today is not the day for me to talk about that. It happens like that, and it's a manipulation of the mind. If you study what we call the art of manipulation, you know how these things are done. And these people are very smart, and they are using the movies they are watching, their children are watching, the schools they are attending, to manipulate the minds of the little children to think that it is okay to say, I love you, Satan. It is okay to act on your feelings. It is okay to do anything you want as long as you feel so, and that there's no authority over their heads. So parents, be very careful. Now, the last video I'll show you before I bring my discussion to an end is one of the videos I love. Now, a parent passionately confronted the school board about the things they are doing to their children, which is evil. Now watch it, I'll be right back.
Is this a certain agenda being pushed into the classrooms? I'm here to bring awareness to the emails that had surfaced earlier this month. The one I find most disturbing of all is of a third grade teacher trying to talk about sex with 8-year-old students. These are 8-year-old children that she's trying to hold a sexual orientation class with. A parent shared their concern and their objection to it and pulled their kid out. And instead of this teacher being concerned of what she did wrong, she goes to a district employee and asks for ways of how she can continue to teach sexual orientation to her third grade class. You guys want us to believe that this isn't a propaganda, that no agenda is being held? This wasn't just any sexuality class. This was specifically designed 3 days a week. She taught LGBTQ curriculum in her class. It raises the question, how many of those students are excelling in that classroom? Is everybody in that class getting A's in math, English, grammar, social studies? That we can dedicate 3 days a week to teach 8-year-olds about sexual orientation? I don't care what kind of sex is being discussed. The word sexuality, nudity, does not belong in the ears in a classroom of 8-year-old kids. And when a parent showed their concern, what does this teacher do? Completely disregards and goes behind the parent's back trying to find ways of how to continue these lesson plans. The level of disrespect that has been shown to Christian conservative parents is becoming very obvious. It's like all of a sudden, just because we don't fit the agenda, we don't fit within the parameters of the agenda that's being pushed, we're being disregarded and pushed to the side. We're not talking about having people excluded. We're talking about the level of uncomfortability that some parents are experiencing. And that's important. Because if you guys want to talk about including all, listening to all, every student matters, our kids matter too. And we don't want those subjects being taught to children who are just 8 years old. And the topics get worse and worse and the subjects get more detailed. And I'm sorry, are we doing Bible studies in classrooms? No, we're not, right? So why is this a certain agenda being pushed into the classrooms? But if we don't take a stand and we don't share our voice, They're just going to sweep this under the rug. Why should a parent overhear her 8-year-old kid being taught about sex?
Mrs. Tiber says, "Good morning, Sally and Craig. As you know, I teach 3rd grade. Today I talked to my class about LGBTQ Pride Month and played 2 short videos from YouTube that were geared toward kids. A parent who heard the lesson and discussion made her daughter leave the Zoom and texted me asking when I was done discussing sexual orientation so that she can let her kids back onto Zoom. I was planning on doing more lessons tomorrow and Wednesday, but now I'm afraid to." After sending the email, Mrs. Tiber received a response from Mr. Craig Lewis, part of district staff, that said, "Do not be concerned or afraid. Your principal should support you, as I know that our district, including Vivian, does," end quote. This district staffer goes even further and gives more media recommendations to the teacher, but says to steer clear of content that says sexual or coming out, since it may raise red flags. In other words, coaching this teacher on proven methods to push her agenda, but to stay under the radar. Immediately after the release of this email chain, the parents at Jefferson Elementary who have had Ms. Tiber as their child's teacher reached out to the principal and demanded answers. Why is gender and sexuality issues being taught to 8-year-olds to begin with? With the tremendous loss of learning our children experienced the past 2 years, coupled with the already dismal reading and math performance scores of public schools, why are teachers taking away precious learning time to push their own political and social agendas? In what realm should 8-year-olds be discussing topics around transgenderism, lesbian, gay, queer, and coming out? All words which were repeated many times in these videos. As a parent, I demand an investigation into this matter, the teacher, and the district as a whole. The lid has been flipped and the level of systemic indoctrination is abhorrent.
All right, so welcome back. You know, the school system has become the frontier or the advocate of the devil, and you have to be very careful. Remember, in the Bible, God gave Isaac to Abraham, and Abraham gave Isaac back to God. So the question is, what God is giving you, God has given you a child. Are you raising that child for the devil or for Satan? Are you raising the child to act stupidly or not? Are you raising hopeless children or not, who will not be able to serve God? One thing I always tell people around me is that if you can't raise a child to be the way God has destined for that child, don't have a child, don't have children. Because personally, I know how it is very difficult to raise a child. In the early 2000s, I was given that training as early as around 12 years old. I was taught and trained how to handle children, and I was in charge of a lot of children back in school as a guardian, as a parent to them. And so I know how difficult it is to raise a child or to raise children at home. But if God gave Isaac to Abraham and Abraham gave Isaac back to God, the question is, when God gives you a child, will you be able to boldly say that this child, I've raised him to be the child that God wants, and I'm giving that child back to God? God was so passionate that he could give a testimony about Abraham, say that I know that Abraham will teach my children to follow my footsteps. Can God say the same thing about you? That I know that Mrs. can raise my children to follow me, and he can give them back to me? That is the question God is asking you today. Can you raise your child for God? If not, one day you shall stand in the presence of God and give an account of how your children turn out to be. And that day, I hope you will stand worthy to give an account of that. Guard your children. Don't let the enemy steal them. Protect them, because they are the apple of God's eye. And their angels are always beholding the face of God, giving him report on what is happening on earth. You are a guardian to that child. Remember, that child belongs to God, not you. He only gave it to you to raise them up to become what God wants them to be, not the way you want them to be. So one day God is going to ask you how they turn up. And I hope and I pray that you stand worthy on that day. God bless you. And kindly share this video with all the parents as well. If you are a parent, and if you are somebody who an upcoming parent, be mindful of how you are guarding or protecting your children, because there is a war against children, and that war is a silent one. It's going on in our day. God bless you. Bye bye for now. The global stage. The global stage.